Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth, my colleagues on City Council, city staff, and invited guests. I want to welcome everybody to the City Council meeting, and I would now ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and after that will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I now ask my colleagues to please note your presence electronically.
7 members of City Council are present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we do have the minutes of a closed session on July, excuse me. We did,
Read it.
I'm doing the minutes now, right? Right. We have the minutes from a closed session on July 24th, 2023, and a call meeting on July 25th, 2023, and a regular meeting on July 25th, 2023. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Would you please vote electronically?
Mayor, I'm abstaining. I was out of town during that meeting.
Thank you, sir.
The
And
minutes
welcome.
are adopted 6-0.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker statement for this evening?
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have now come to the agenda item of City Manager's Report, item 23-261. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance appropriating $24,059 to the FY 2024 Social Services Fund budget for the purpose of completing adult protective services and independent living initiative grants.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Our next item, item 23-262. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a grant in the amount of $514,068 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and appropriating said sum in the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Commonwealth Attorney Office for Victim Witness Program.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have 2 speakers for this item. Our first speaker is Ms. Donna Biggs. And ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live in the Woodbine Farms neighborhood. Agenda item 23-262 is an ordinance accepting a grant in the amount of over $514,000 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and appropriating the money into the grants fund for the year 2024 for the use by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for the Victim Witness Program. In the budget book, page 148, it reads that the Commonwealth Attorney administers one grant program, which is the Victim Witness Program. This program provides direct service for victims and witnesses. This grant provides funding for 7 full-time appointees. The budget book has a total balance for expenses of over $3.8 million, with the money coming out of the general fund. The Commonwealth Attorney staff duties are to provide information on victimization, crime prevention, victims' legal rights and protections, criminal justice process, emotional support to victims, assisting with victims with safety planning, assisting with victim compensation application, assisting victims with assistance in submitting comments to courts and parole boards, interviewing with creditors, landlords, and employers on behalf of victims, assisting victims with shelter and transportation, and providing referral for other services for victims. There is a clause that prevents the use of grant funds that are considered to be urgent. The Commonwealth Attorney staff may use its general fund victim witness line item money for emergency, temporary, or permanent housing, transportation, and other necessities for victims or witnesses who've expressed to a member of the Attorney General's staff that he or she is in immediate danger. It is interesting to review this information to the City Council members when we have witnessed a number of people coming to City Council for assistance. What happened? I received a telephone call yesterday for help, and I didn't know how to help the woman. I have received telephone calls about assistance with compensation planning. The other request I am making is to be given a copy of the income and expense statement for the year that shows me how this money is going to be spent. How come the request for grant money has not been forwarded to the Community Criminal Justice Board for review? Last but not least, how come the Commonwealth Attorney has not invested in starting a chapter of the National Organization of Parents of Murdered Children for all the victims and witnesses in the city? And by the way, what is her emergency telephone number?
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Mr. Cedric Cradle. Mr. Cradle, if you're here, come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes, sir. I do not see Mr. Cradle. That concludes our speakers. We have a council member, Councilmember Barnes. You have the floor, sir.
Just for clarification purposes, I remember that the news did a report saying this was for witness protection, and this is not for witness protection. It's a grant that they already get every year, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are in need of a motion and a second on this item.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 23-263. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a conference and education assistance grant in the amount of $20,000 from the Virginia Department of Fire Programs and appropriating said amount in the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services for the Women in Public Service Conference.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Item 23-264. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting assistance to firefighters grant funds in the amount of $177,272.72 from the Department of Homeland Security Federal Emergency Management Agency and appropriated said amount in the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services for an augmented cancer screening program.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have a registered speaker for this item, Ms. Tiffany Stewart. Ma'am, if you are here, if you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Tiffany Stewart. I work in Portsmouth as a paramedic, and I'm the executive vice president of our union, Local 539, that represents 90% of the full-time firefighters, paramedics, and dispatchers in our city. Tonight, I'm here to speak in strong support of adopting 23-264, an AFG grant dedicated to cancer detection in the fire department. Last year, the World Health Organization classified firefighting occupational exposures as a Group 1 carcinogen to humans. That's the same as cigarette smoke. There are many contributing factors to this, some of which are smoke, diesel exhaust, the off-gassing of burning combustibles, and sadly, our turnout gear. Occupational cancer is the leading cause of death in the fire service, making it crucial for us to take proactive measures to safeguard our health and well-being. Our local has worked with admin and council in the past to take steps towards operating in a safe or cleaner environment. Despite these changes, our profession comes with fundamental exposures that are unavoidable. The Grail blood test is unique, offering an approach to cancer detection at earlier stages than ever before. By catching cancer at its inception, our firefighters will have the best possible chance of treatment and recovery, as it has been linked to better clinical outcomes. As a department with multiple occupational cancer diagnoses, both active and retired employees, this is important and an opportunity for the city to prioritize our health and longevity. Let us not forget that our firefighters are not just uniformed responders. They are parents, siblings, friends, and neighbors whose well-being affects the fabric of our community. I urge you all to vote yes in support of this grant for the betterment of our firefighters and paramedics and for our great city. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move
to-
adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. We've now moved to item 23-265. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting a historical African-American cemeteries and graves fund grant in the amount of $14,330 from the Virginia Department of Historic Resources and appropriating said amount in the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Parks and Recreation for assessment, maintenance, and repair work at Mount Calvary Cemetery.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have one speaker for this particular item, Ms. Donna Biggs. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live in the Woodburn Farms neighborhood in Churchland. Agenda item 23-265 is an ordinance to accept the historical African-American Cemeteries and Grave Fund grant for over $14,000 from the Virginia Department of Historical Resources to use by the Department of Parks and Recreation to assess, maintain, and repair work at Mount Calvary Cemetery. In the budget book, it reads, the Departments of Landscape Maintenance and Cemetery Maintenance have been realigned to the Parks Department. The expenses noted for the Parks, Recreation and Tourism - Park is over $2.4 million. The funding sources are General Fund, Public Law Library Fund, and the Golf Fund. Also in the budget book is the administration description of services provided. This division provides overall support to the other divisions. This support includes oversight of the operating and capital improvement project budgets, staffing, accounts payable, receivable, grants administration, contractual obligation, marketing and advertising, production of city events, permitting approvals, and building lasting partnerships with businesses, citizens, and other organizations. There is no contractual obligation noted in the budget book regarding gravestones and ground maintenance for cemeteries. There is no production of city events to honor those in the cemeteries. There was a historic resource marker installed in 2016 at Mount Calvary Cemetery Complex. So what kind of city events are held at Mount Calvary and Lincoln Memorial Cemetery? Mount Calvary Cemetery Complex is in voting precinct 13, where the people vote at St. Mark Missionary Baptist Church. There's a civic league, a community center, a tenant council, and some churches in that area. Lincoln Memorial Cemetery is in voting precinct 20, which is a historic subdistrict, and voting is at Noble Street Baptist Church. There are civic leagues, many churches, and a tenant council in this voting precinct. A church owned this cemetery for 10 years before the trustees gave a funeral home ownership, and then the owner donated the cemetery to the city. What I don't understand is the city has a Historic Preservation Commission. One of the districts is Truxton. These cemeteries are located within this district. The commission specifically is responsible for preserving and protecting historic places and areas in the city. We need to honor all people who have served not only his or her family, but also his or her community and his or her country. The Mission Continues is a volunteer organization of veterans who may have taken off the uniform, but doesn't mean these veterans stop serving. The Mission Continues empowers veterans to continue their service and empower communities with veteran talent, skills, and preparedness to generate visible impact. Veterans join Mission Continues in serving again in your community. Let's honor all and stop dishonoring them by not paying.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 23-266. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance amending and reordaining Section 16-37, positioning of materials for collection of Article 2 of Chapter 16, Garbage and Refuse of the Code of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia, for the purpose of eliminating the placement of garbage cans in alleys for collection.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have two speakers for this item. Our first speaker is, sir, if I mispronounce your name, please correct me, Matthew Globke. Please state your name and address, sir, and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Globke. I live at 347 Broad Street in the heart of the Port Norfolk Historic District. I'm here tonight to ask you to vote against this resolution. Our alleyways are very important to our lives, our lifestyles there in Port Norfolk. The alleyways have been there since the neighborhood was planned. It is the way it's always been, so we don't have to look at our garbage. It keeps the streets sanitary, keeps the streets clean, keeping the garbage back there. I know it's been said that they want to move. You'd like to move the collection of the refuse to the street. We don't have driveways in that neighborhood. Everybody parks on the street. There are maybe a handful of people with driveways. it's too dense, the parking in that neighborhood, to justify having the garbage collected out front when it's always been collected in the alleys. It makes much more sense to keep it back there. This puts an undue burden also on the elderly and the infirm. Like I said, we don't have driveways. These people have to drag their garbage cans across their yards, all the way from the back of their properties to the fronts of their properties. It's just not a good look for that to happen. Our alleyways are also where our septic sewer systems run. I know there was some talk about returning our alleyways to us as part of our properties. That's just not going to be feasible with the septic sewer running under it. What happens when something happens to the septic sewer and you have to have access 4 houses down from where your property is? There's over 1,000 homes in this neighborhood, and the vast majority of us would like the garbage collection kept in the alleyways. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And our next speaker is John Lifsey. Wait, sir, come on up. But Councilman Barnes, sir, you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. For as far as the recycling, does the recycling go in the back too, or does that go in the front?
Yeah, that does go in the front, but we didn't want that out front either. But we were told that because of the size of the trucks, for the new recycling program that was implemented, they had to go out front. We acquiesced to that. The city already has the trucks that can pick up the garbage in our alleys. It's much more efficient in the alleyways, less wear and tear on the trucks. They only have to go one direction down the alleyways, and they collect 2 sides of garbage at once. If they put it out front, they'll have to go up one side of the street and then back down the other side of the street with more traffic in the neighborhood.
Well, let me ask this. How have you guys adopted to the recycling bins being out front?
We haven't, especially when it doesn't get picked up on time. It makes it a challenge for people to park. 9 times out of 10, they're left in the middle of the streets. It's not great, to be quite honest.
And to our city manager, how long have we been doing the recycling program in the front?
Inception, I can't say inception. I know has to be over
Right around 10 years, I
15,
believe.
10 years.
Yeah, in our
Yeah,
neighborhood.
over about 10 years.
And it's been a hassle.
Have we ever had anybody like come up here and say anything?
Not to my knowledge, not until last council meeting that I started receiving emails today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lifsey? Sir, if you would state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is John Lifsey. I reside at 229 Mount Vernon Avenue in Port Norfolk. I am currently the Vice President of the Port Norfolk Civic League, and I am here tonight speaking on their behalf in opposition to this ordinance. In Port Norfolk, all the sewage lines owned by the city are located in the alleys. There are service lines in every alley. They're mostly cable service, but there is some power lines on them also. Most lots in Port Norfolk are only 40 feet wide and do not have driveways. So many of our residents use the alleys to access parking pads and garages in their backyards. For these reasons alone, the city will still have to maintain the alleys, even if no trash is picked up. Like all of Portsmouth, many of our residents are elderly, and with no driveways, they will have to maneuver the trash cans over the curb. We hear a lot of conversation about improving the appearance of Portsmouth, and we're all for that. Unfortunately, the end result, if this ordinance is passed, is that a lot of our trash cans will end up becoming yard art. The alleys are certainly a challenge for us also. During our last cleanup, we picked up enough junk to fill at least 3 of the refuse trucks. This will always be the case, but we will always continue to push against it and to clean our own trash refuse from the alleys. We also have issues with certain neighbors not maintaining their part of the alley. This can be controlled easily by the city staff citing the homeowners, just like they do for tall grass. These alleys have been in existence and used by the city and by our neighbors for well over 100 years. To suddenly say that they are now unsafe to use is at least a stretch. Proper maintenance by the residents and by the city is the answer, not simply stopping trash pickup. We have not given up on our neighborhood. We ask the city not give up on us either. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
To the city manager, if adopted, do we have anything in place that will help the elderly take their trash cans to the front?
Great question. Yes, we currently have a program that's been in place for, I know, about 10 years, where the elderly can sign up for trash collection. So they sign up and our people come and take their trash from their yard to the actual street and dump it and return the trash bin. So there is currently a program that is available. We have over 1,000 residents on that program currently in that area. We're going to push the program back out again just to update, make sure we don't miss anybody. And some of the people who are no longer with us, we want to make sure we take them off the list.
Well, I think I mentioned it before about, sharing programs to the citizens. Can we put that also in, on our social media and also, in the water bills when it comes out so that citizens will know about it?
As a notification, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to vote against this because I think the alleyways, when they were built over 100 years ago, they were built for the purpose to service the utilities from the back alley to keep things off the street. It may work for a recycling can, but you're talking about doubling the space needed for a trash can and recycle can. So to me, we're just upsetting people that shouldn't be upset. I see no problem with, the trash being serviced from the alleyway. It sounds like we're penalizing folks for the people who don't maintain their portion of the alleyway, and those are the ones we should be addressing. If there are problems with people obstructing the alleyway or keeping debris there, we should penalize those people, not the people that maintain their properties and maintain the alleyways. So I will be voting against this.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is to City Manager and I guess City staff. How many communities are affected by the delivery or the pickup with alleyways? Is this the only Portsmouth community?
Port Norfolk is the main one, and Waterview. Those are the two communities.
Okay, and I know we had a presentation, a lengthy presentation last month about the garbage trucks damaging the trees and the uprooting of the roots of the trees and all of that. So the alley, does it belong to the citizens or the city?
The alleys belong to the city because we have infrastructure within the alleys. However, they have properties, we're talking about years and years where they're infringing on the alleys, people are pulling their fences in, but the trucks are enormous. So the trucks are unable to get through the alleyways, and you gotta remember, we actually have light posts there now. So what used to be is no longer, we've changed. And so it's just time to make some changes in the community to adapt. And again, this program we were gonna roll out, if approved, or adopted October 1st, so we could give enough information to scheduling and give enough information to our citizens so that they could be prepared for the transition.
Thank you.
Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be joining Councilman Moody in voting no on this. I understand some of the arguments that were made by the city. However, one of the arguments that were made was the condition of the alleys. the condition of the alleys or the neglect of the city. And so I think that there needs to be a plan on how we're going to address those issues, because in the report back to council, it was made mention that the sewage and some of the infrastructure, well, the infrastructure for those communities were ran through the alleys. And so we need to do our due diligence to ensure that the alleyways are taken care of, especially since the option of returning them to citizens is not an option. And then also the parking is also a concern of mine. And I brought this up during the work session last week. Port Norfolk, many of those houses do not have driveways. And also Waterview, for example. If you're going down Shenandoah, which is a very busy street, it's busy street even without trash cans because of cars, and it's being a very high traffic street. And so with some of the same sentiments that Councilman Moody expressed, I will also be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments from my colleagues? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I'm not going to be popular with the Waterview residents and the Port Norfolk residents, I'm afraid. But I drove behind the garbage trucks through the alleys and watched. And what I saw was a safety issue and a resource issue. So the trucks that have to drive through the alleyways to collect trash are consuming 3 drivers, where we could have 2 of those folks on trucks with the claws to get around the neighborhoods on time. One of the Port Norfolk residents mentioned getting trash picked up on time. One of the challenges we have with getting trash picked up on time, we've got 3 people tied up on trucks driving through alleyways at 3 miles an hour when they're moving to pick up trash. I get it that we have elderly folks. There's a program to help them. And so I encourage those who need help to sign up for that program. But this is a case where I'm going to vote yes, because while it's going to add some burden to some neighbors of mine, it's the right thing to do for the city, in my opinion. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. My colleagues, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, I would ask everyone to vote electronically.
This item is adopted 5-2.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next item, item 23-267. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. A resolution supporting the City of Portsmouth Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. We've now come to the agenda item of new business, item 23-268, boards and commissions. And Councilman Moody, would you please read the boards and commissions information?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the following appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions be approved. The reappointments are as follows: Historic Preservation Commission, Chris Crowder; Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority, Sean Prince; Renee Wicks, Stephanie Wright. The following are new appointments: Board of Building Code Appeals, Nicholas Muller, Kenneth Bullock, Chris Crowder. Board of Zoning Appeals, Edward Brown. History Commission, Catherine Bryant. Historic Preservation Commission, Allison Cabrera Bosco, Monique Doutry, Matthew Rose. Newport Development Authority, Sandra Taylor. Planning Commission, Ocasio G., Sandra Taylor. Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority, Albert Williams. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We already need a motion and a second to approve the list.
We have a motion.
Motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
We have now come to item 23-269, items submitted by council members. And Councilmember Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of things. One of the things I wanted to mention about, is there any way that we could talk with PRHA about the upkeep of their neighborhoods as far as cleaning and things of that nature? And I asked because I was out a couple of neighborhoods, one today and throughout the week last week, and I saw that it's just filthy out there. And I'm not talking about the citizens. I'm talking about, like, for instance, if you go out, some of the ones that look like apartment complexes and they have the white background and it's like very dirty, spider webs everywhere and things of that nature. And the reason why it's a concern for me because of the broken glass theory, where you find things like that, you find crime. And I think if you fix some of those things and clean it up, maybe the citizens out there, and not saying they're not, but they're more inclined to keep it clean and, you know what I'm saying, and make sure that the some of the things that are going on out there may not happen because they may say something to those people or say pick this up or pick that up or some things of that nature. So I just wanted to know if we could talk to them about that, because that kind of bothers me. My second one is that as far as George Washington Highway, we had a person that was somebody in the community that is beloved in the community that was hit by 2 cars on last week. And one of the concerns that some of the citizens were mentioning was a crossroad. Is it possible that we can look into getting one of those put in that area? And I'm talking about on George Washington where Marsh Landings, about around that area. Also, I had today actually, somebody came to me about 2 people about when it comes to reporting a crime. We have a online method that we use as far as that. And I don't know if the police chief needs to answer this, or maybe you can, but is that for serious crimes too as well, as far as reporting it for all? Okay, because the citizen itself was kind of concerned about that because of the issue that they had, and to them the issue was serious, and they felt like I think they said they reported it up there. Well, actually, not that they reported it, that they called and they were told to report it up there on the tracker. And I didn't know we actually had something of that nature.
So that I am able to, and as well as the chief, to be able to address that, can you send us what you have so that we can further investigate and we don't have to kind of, speak out of context for a situation we're really not familiar with?
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
And my other 2 issues, one is regarding the report back as far as the question that I had asked in last meeting regarding wanting to know what EDA was doing as far as recruiting businesses. And what I mean by that is businesses as far as attracting people to the city, quality jobs, and things of that nature. The report back that I saw was kind of very broad. It didn't address my questions that I asked last week. So maybe we need to I would like another report back specifically addressing those issues to see what are we doing to recruit businesses, because it kind of just told this is what we're trying to do, this is direction we're trying to go, but it didn't say what the city is doing to recruit those businesses. What do we have in place and things of that nature?
So if I may speak to that really quick. EDA has a meeting every month, a monthly meeting, and we talk about and discuss those things at the economic development meeting. Some councilmen attend, some actually come as liaisons, and others just attend to get the information. What you were presented today was the workforce development program, but as far as the businesses they go after, who, where, the areas that we're recruiting, and where we plan to develop, all of those things are discussed at the EDA meeting, and they are taped. So what I would do is I can provide you a few of the meetings where we discussed the businesses that they are recruiting. Sometimes there are some things they can't discuss in public, so we have closed sessions. Because in a recruiting process, you don't want to put something out there and deter the person or the company that's coming. Some things you can't disclose, but we do actually do that in conversations and group meetings at every EDA meeting. So, did you want to? Okay.
No, and I get what you're saying, but my question is specifically like that. I want to know, like, what is the process? What are we doing? And I would think council would want to know that too in the report.
Yeah. Are you asking the mechanism?
The mechanism, and I would think council would want to know something like that as well, not just the things that's discussed in that meeting. Going to see it myself, I would think we all want to have a say so on the direction of economics in this city and what's coming to this city and what we're doing to best bring people to the city. Because I know we also have to bring jobs to the city, living wage jobs, but we also have to bring people outside of the city to the city of Portsmouth so that they can spend their money and we can get those tax dollars, and also to accommodate the casino that we have and other developments that we have in this city.
And that's a great response. One of the things that we are challenged with, and one of the reasons you see us approving or bringing forth places for people to live in Portsmouth, because the demographic, the number of residents we have, all of that plays a role in who you are available to recruit. All of that matters. So when we're looking at housing, when we're looking at how many people we have in the city, what areas they are in, all of that plays a role in who we are able to recruit to the city of Portsmouth. And I would love to sit down and have a more detailed conversation with you, so then when we get to that point and we're able to speak to what EDA's plan, it'll allow you to kind of catch up to where we are. Again, we talk about this at every EDA meeting. We identify the areas that we are actually looking to develop. We're looking at areas where we're purchasing in the city to be able to attract those businesses. We do this at every meeting for the
So I think more, because I understand that you're saying at the EDA meeting, maybe we need to have a discussion at the city council meeting so that we can talk about those things, because ultimately we're part of that vision as well, along with the EDA and planning and a bunch of other places. So I would like for us to discuss, maybe we could get a presentation on what they're doing and allow the council members to ask questions so we can contribute to the process.
Okay.
And my last thing, this is to council. I know we've started the process of finding a search firm for city manager. But we also have some other positions that need to be filled. Well, the permanent person is not in those positions. So I would like for us, if it's okay with council, and I guess we would need a consensus for this, is to start the process of the city assessor position.
Based on the request, I think there needs to be further discussion, and then we can determine what the course will be. That wasn't something on the agenda, so I think we need to have a little more discussion and then add that perhaps as an item on the agenda or a closed session to have that discussion. Okay? Councilman Tillage, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So my topics that I have for this evening are, number one, relating to a concern that I believe a citizen brought to our attention a few weeks ago, Mr. Toller, in regards to the cleanliness of the city. I've drove around, I do this in my spare time, and we do have a lot of debris. I know that it was mentioned at the work session that we have a team of people that are been hired as part-time to go clean up the city. I haven't seen the impact of that just yet. Also, in regards to the elevated water storages, I've noticed that the Churchland water storage tank has begun being rehabbed, and I've noticed that the tent's up. Victory Boulevard, not quite yet. Can we get a update on the status of both of those water tanks and a timeline for those? In addition, when I reached out a couple weeks ago via email in regards to a CIP update, we were provided a spreadsheet. On that spreadsheet, it listed under construction, in parentheses, includes projects out for bid and awarded. The question that I have related to that is the phases. It makes mentions that A, B, and C phase, but there was no legend or key that defined what A, B, or C phase was. And so that can come back to us and report back. The third and last issue is the gift cards. So I know we've been working on gift cards, getting those distributed to seniors. There's been some events and application processes. And so in an update to council, if we can be provided the number of gift cards remaining and the amounts and how those were distributed. I know that there was a gift card distribution at Churchland High School. I've heard mixed reviews on how that was done, but if we can get an update on the ARPA gift cards, because what I'm also aware of, we've reached that 1 year mark, and so the $100 is no longer, because a fee has now been tacked on, and so people, when they're getting their gift cards, it's now like $96 and some change. So if we can please get an update on that via email or however you want to present it, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moody, Councilman Moody, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of my colleagues have mentioned the cleanliness of the city. I would also add to that the condition of fences in a lot of our main thoroughfares. Wooden fences or just some places slats, boards are missing. Other places the fences have fallen down, period. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Recently, we had a presentation on implementing photo red in some areas of the city, as well as the flock in a lot of areas of the city. I'd like to ask the city manager for an update on where we stand on implementing those things.
Wonderful. I would go through the list, but the chief does this way better than I do. So, Chief, do you mind giving an update? I have the document here. If I could hand it to you, but you probably know it by heart. Just a quick, brief update of where we are on all of the many projects that we have going on for the city of Portsmouth.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, City Manager. Provided the City Manager a list earlier today in anticipation of the possibility of being asked this particular question. So if you bear with me, I will go down this particular list, okay? In regards to the Fuchsia's technology in and of itself, the actual implementation of Fuchsia's as a software and the hardware has been fully implemented within the city. We are currently in the process of receiving proposals to update our existing closed-circuit television cameras that we have. Many of the cameras that we have within our city are what we call red signaling cameras that signal traffic. They're not pan, tilt, zoom cameras, which we were hoping to, which we would look for at our major intersections and things of that nature that would assist us in being able to investigate and to track activities within the city. So we're in the proposal for that. We're hoping to have, and we've looked at that as the best practice is probably going to be for us to roll that out in phases. The individual places that are potentially the most critical to us are the ones that we're going to focus on first. So far as the Real-Time Crime Center itself, the Real-Time Crime Center has had the update of all sockets that are within the facility have been installed by our city facilities. As of today, we were to begin receiving from the vendor an updated install of our infrastructure for that, the actual hardware, television monitors, the computers for the Real-Time Crime Center, and that is to run until the end of the week. One of the things I think is a highlight, I've had some conversations with, and we've had some situations documented in our London Oaks section of the city here recently, and I've had some conversations with Department of or HUD for short. I've had some conversations with them and the young lady who facilitates the grants and funding for that particular facility. She's been instrumental in having some conversations with the property owner to get them to have some things implemented and to include site surveys in addition to funding for their private security, which they had started and then stopped, along with addressing some other quality of life issues. They've fully are fully implementing our Fuchsia's technology onto into their system, which will give us access to their camera system that will give us an opportunity to be able to look at and provide additional eyes and ears for potential situations that may happen and do happen in that particular locality. The Rivers Casino has finished their substation that they have built for us, and we are in the final stages of allowing our city IT with the installation of computers into that facility and camera installation. Again, additional substation will help us with not only security within that corridor, but also response time to other issues within that city and within the area of Victory Corridor. The flock gunshot detection software. Currently, we have 45 active cameras within the city. We have one that has been damaged by a auto accident, and we have 14 that are still in the planning and deployment phase. We also, in addition, we had a vehicle actually that was recovered using this technology as late as today. So again, it continues to pay dividends for us. The Raven technology, which is our gunshot detection, currently in service, we have 38 active 38 active, I guess our best thing to call them is modules that are already put in place. We have 12 that are ready for installation and another 24 that are in the planning phases. So to explain to you just a little bit more when it comes to the Raven technology, we have already begun to receive notifications for gunshot detection that are occurring within the area of Southside Gardens. areas of Prentice Park and areas of the Dale's Home section. These notifications that we are receiving are totally work against or totally not associated with any call for service. So these systems are detecting the actual shots themselves, regardless of whether a person calls or not. So an officer, myself, or anybody who has access can actually go in when they hear the actual, they get the alert, play what technology, what the sound heard like, and then respond. It gives you a location to respond to based on GPS tracking. Our speed zone, red light cameras, and bus stoplight implementation. On Saturday, I had a presentation, this past Saturday, I had a presentation with our school board to update them on our technology that we have that they will be implementing as well, which they were very happy with. We are in the conversations with them for the make, model, and number of school buses that will be receiving these particular apparatus to go on the school bus. In addition to that, we also have conducted speed studies within the areas where this red light cameras and speed zone cameras will be associated. That information has been turned back over to the vendor who is processing it at this time for best places for these to be implemented. Again, these are at this point zero cost to the city so far as the implementation. I want to remind you, and I'm sure if you've been paying attention to our sister city, in particular Suffolk, this has been a hot button issue that was put out last week and garnered some media attention. This is the very same conversation that some of our citizens and other localities will be having. Again, this technology is coming to Portsmouth. People need to be aware of that. The company itself will be doing a media campaign to announce that information and to give citizens a fair opportunity of warning where these cameras will be. This is not a money-making venture or intended to be. However, there is data that's associated once these are implemented that show, and Suffolk is one of the very localities that proves it, that once implemented, there is a significant decrease in the amount of speed that we have that go through those particular intersections and places. Again, the issue in and of itself is to slow drivers down and lessen the likelihood that somebody is struck and killed by a vehicle. There were located within this particular speed study several non-functioning traffic or school zone lights that were not functioning that we have put in to be replaced and repaired, and we're in the process of having that done. Last but not least, the Harbor Square parking garage. A site survey was completed last week, and as late as today, there were materials that were dropped off at the facility, at the parking garage, for them to begin the installation of not only the wiring and hardware, but also for them to continue the building phase. That is our ongoing project. We still do maintain our temporary cameras in that facility at this time. Any questions?
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, sir.
I have other questions, but I do have a question for the chief right now.
You have the floor, sir.
The London Oaks, the information you provided to council was very thorough, and through the interim city manager. The connection with HUD, is that because of the funding that property owner is getting? Okay, and so are there other properties in the city that fall under that too, that
Yes, sir.
are going to have that same type of examination?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the premise of this is, obviously sometimes we have difficulty in getting just basic conversation. My goal is simple, is to make the community safe for the people who inhabit that area. And I just took the standpoint that if you won't call me back, then I'll go around and get somebody who will ensure that you call me back. And it actually worked. And so immediately we started getting some help, and there are a couple of other locations that are on that fall under this young lady, and she is very eager to assist us with some of our more challenging areas.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I thought that was very thorough.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you still have the floor.
Okay, this question is for the city manager, and that is regards to the supplemental funding that was discussed with the sheriff's department. Just if you would follow up on where we are with that, because I know we had mentioned about the first quarter, there was going to be some examination of providing that supplemental funding. The second deals with the school metal detection. The email that was sent sounds like that's moving forward. The source of that funding.
Council approved the funding that the city paid for that.
Right. So is that coming out of the general?
The CIP.
CIP.
We put it in CIP.
Okay, all right. And the next question is for our city attorney, and that is regarding the presentation by Dr. Cassandra Newby-Alexander. When will that be scheduled? And at our last council meeting, I mentioned that there should be our federal representative, our state representatives should be invited to that meeting, or they should have some representation there considering the issues that are going to be historically discussed.
I did see that hearing, and we are working with the legislative committee and Sherry Neal, our intergovernmental liaison, to get those invitations out. We spoke with the professor, Dr. Newby-Alexander, and she gave us 2 dates in September, so we anticipated being in September. We're working with the manager on setting aside that time, and I think that covers it.
Okay, and so the same time when we have that Pinner's Point presentation, that sounds like that'll be around the same time as the disparity study update. If we could not schedule those on the same time period.
Yes. Currently, I'm waiting for the draft, and so once I get the draft, that will give me an opportunity to review, and then I'll bring that back with final changes to her, so that she can get that all taken care of, and we can submit that to council.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do have a couple of items to submit. First of all, I want to thank the Coast Guard. We are an official Coast Guard city, and many of you may be aware that the Coast Guard celebrated its birthday on last Friday, and different from what they've done in the past, they actually had a takeover of the Children's Museum, and they invited all the families and children, and even the families of Portsmouth, to come and celebrate the Coast Guard birthday. I had an opportunity to stop by and make some comments. Want to thank Captain Dewey, who is the commander or the CEO, the commanding officer of the Coast Guard base here in Portsmouth. Want to thank him for being there, and all of those coasties who participated and who have served in service in our community. We are grateful for them and their families. And I will close by saying Semper Paratus. That is, to the Coast Guard team, always ready, always ready. In addition to that, on Saturday, we had a cleanup in the city of Portsmouth, the recycling that took place, and our wonderful waste management team with other volunteers from our sororities and fraternities here in the city of Portsmouth helped 327 of our citizens that brought in different types of items to be recycled. In addition to that, many clothes were brought that we took over to the Goodwill to help clothe some folks. So a great day in the city of Portsmouth. We had a lot of folks working. The last thing I want to mention, we did have the FBI join us at the YLD, Youth Leadership Development Program that we have every first Saturday at the J.E. Parker Community Center. It was a packed house of young people with their parents and mentors. And I also want to thank my colleague, Councilman Hugel. He had a lot to do on Saturday, but he was able to make it out. It's very important. I can't stress enough how important it is that we continue to support our children and our families with efforts like the Youth Leadership Development Group and the Saturday Academy. It's working, folks. I can tell you that that organization is making a difference, and we're going to continue to support it. But I wanted to send a big thank you to those individuals as well. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Yeah, there was one more issue. I would like to ask Mr. Mayor that at our next public work session, that the issue that Councilman Bond raised about the city assessor, that be put on a closed session to discuss the process.
Absolutely. We could get that on the agenda for the next meeting, sir. Thank you. Does that conclude our item submitted by council? Then let's move on to the report on pending items. Madam Interim City Manager.
I have no pending items.
Thank you, ma'am. We've come to the part in our agenda of non-agenda speakers, item 23-271. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker statement?
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than to any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first speaker this evening is Ms. Shirley Cherry. Ms. Cherry, if you will come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good evening, council members. My name is Shirley Pettiford Cherry. I live 949 Vermont Avenue in the Mount Hermon section of Portsmouth. And I would like to thank the City Council for their assistance in revitalizing Bernard Griffin Park, where it was a dream of Tyrone Hines and Joe Hooks. This is a landmark from all of the people that lived in Mount Hermon and even in the Prentice Point area. We spent all of our free time at the park, which was a very nice place as growing up in Mount Hermon. And now we see that people are coming back to enjoy the park. So today, I'm just asking that if we could ask this City Council if they could help us to be able to put down some grass and a sprinkle system because when it rains, it becomes a very, muddy place. And we were just hoping that we could just be able to keep it as nice as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Ms. Cherry, thank you for your comments regarding the Bernard Griffin Park. And I think that the issue is actually deeper than just the name Bernard Griffin Park. That originally the Mount Hermon Park. And I've since learned that was the park that African Americans could go to. When there was no other park, it was in Portsmouth for African Americans, it was the Mount Hermon Park. I understand that that park used to have a tennis court. It had the water fountain, and actually, I originally thought that when there was mention of a fountain, that you were speaking of a flowing fountain. But as a young boy growing up, my uncle, John McIntyre's house is right across the street from the park. And I can remember drinking water from the water fountain there at that park, as well as many other older African Americans I've spoken to about that. So the issue is preserving history. And so it goes deeper than just that name. That is preserving a historical landmark in our community. And just like other communities in this city, they've had their cemeteries preserved. They've had their historic communities, Old Town, preserved. This city has indirectly subsidized private golf courses that African Americans could not have membership in. And so I think that just as we have maintained the historical nature of other communities, that the African American community cannot be neglected. That represents a holy place. And I think that our city manager should come back. Just like we have sprinklers at other city-owned properties, we need to look at what that investment would be there so that we can maintain a historical place. And I'm asking that the city manager, if you would come back, based on consensus of council, if we would direct the city manager to come back with the cost of what has been requested, not just by you today, but has been requested before, so that we can see what is needed to preserve that historic location, just like we've done others. I've noticed too that there are some historical grant funds that may be available, that if we could check into that as well, with that being a historical site or moving towards actually getting it designated as a historical site, there could be additional funds considering the historic nature. So thank you, Ms. Chair, and Mr. Mayor, if there are no issues, if we could direct the city manager to come back with that cost for council to consider.
So first of all, I think our last council meeting, there was a discussion on what the direction was ma'am, you can sit down. Thank you. There was a description of what was going to happen going forward with the Bernard Griffin Park. And since we have covered that already, I think it's fair to say that that process is moving forward. So as a result, what I heard last time, there is an effort to install some grass seed and do some other things. And so I would say that based on the response, we are moving in a direction. So unless there's something new to add, I think, we need to let that process play itself out.
Yeah, it is something to add. And it's not just a matter of just planting grass seeds, but what Ms. Cherry has brought forward, as well as others, is sustaining the park. And I think, just as I mentioned, just like other communities have been sustained by tax dollar investments, subsidies, we need to do the same thing for historically African-American locations, and that is a historic location in our community. And so what I'm asking is that the city manager comes back with a cost figure for sustaining that location landscape-wise. And that includes the sprinkler system that has been raised.
Can you speak to what the process is going forward with what was designated, ma'am?
Okay, I can bring this back, but I just want, when we say neglected, I don't want anybody to think that that park is neglected, because it's not. The city takes care and maintains that park. The issue that I have run into with that park and members of the I don't know what you want to call that committee, because it's not the civic league, that say they want a sprinkler system. And maybe it would be best if I come back to show why there is no irrigation there. And if that's what you're asking, because the city maintains that area as already.
Yeah, when I speak of neglect, I'm not talking just about a 2023 perspective. I'm talking historically, that park has been neglected. There's no doubt about that. When I speak of the cost, I'm asking, just like you would do for any other project, what would be the cost of putting in a sprinkler system? It's as simple as that. And that's the request that's being made.
Well, as I said, the information have been taken into consideration, and keeping, hold on, sir, I have the floor.
I haven't said
And
anything.
I'm getting ready to finish, and then I'll go, but to the point, the reality is, once the community did come forward, and we renamed the park Bernard Griffin Park, there was an effort by council, a recognition by council to restore the park. And that was done. And I believe it was unanimously voted on to restore the park to its grandeur, if we want to say. And I think at the end of the day, we can't discount the efforts that were made once we identified that it needs to be made better. I know Mr. Hines and I know Mr. Hooks, and I had conversations with them as well about moving forward. But the city has moved forward, and the city needs to have credit for that. They need to have credit that we almost spent $500,000 to restore that park, and it's a beautiful facility. And whatever it will take going forward as we continue to maintain it, I think is appropriate. Our interim city manager has already put forth that if she says she's going to come back and provide some data or information relative to a sprinkler, what it would cost, I think she should be allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's what I asked.
So-
yeah, that's all I asked.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is
So
Mr.
will
Moody.
can you have that to us by the next council meeting?
In September,
Right.
it depends on if you have that, because you say you don't want anything on the agenda with the other.
Well, that's just presenting to us a cost figure. You can email that to us as a report back if you like.
Oh, I thought you said bring it to the next council meeting.
Yeah, or by the next council meeting.
I can provide a report back on that.
That's fine.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Well, I think the point has been discussed. I support the sprinkle system. I've probably known, I knew Bernard Griffin probably, well, I know longer than anybody up here, because when I was a student at Western Branch High School, he was a teacher. And I knew him then had the pleasure of serving with him when he was vice mayor, and he was also interim mayor that many of you may have forgotten. So, but I support the sprinkle system. It doesn't make sense to have a park with dirt, and when it rains, it becomes a mud hole. So I certainly support that.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree with Councilman Moody and Councilman Whitaker. As a city, as a society, we're looking to bring community together, having a sense of community, a sense of pride. Bernard Griffin Park does that for the Mount Hermon community. I've been out there this summer to numerous cookouts that Mount Hermon Civic League has put together, that people in the community have put together. And if we're looking to not only enhance community in Mount Hermon, but in any community in the city of Portsmouth, parks are a way to do that. Also providing a green space as we're moving into the 21st century of sustainability, of resiliency. And so I see nothing wrong with the ask of bringing about enhancements to city facilities, such as a sprinkler system. And also, I think at one point it was made mention of having a gazebo put up for cookouts. That's not a cost that's astronomical for a city such as ours. It has an $800 and some million budget. And so I support the request as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Miss Anitra Hampton. Miss Hampton? Oh, she's gone. Our next speaker is Mr. Cliff Page. Sir, if you come forward, state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Cliff Page Jr., 465 Primrose Street. The nexus of my standing at this podium tonight is an all-engulfing fire that occurred at 400 Hatton Street in the 1000 block of High Street, in which I own 2 significant properties, one right next door. This fire could have burned down the entire block. It happened around 3:45 in the morning. The grass was growing up this high in the back, in the alleyway, and you were talking about an alley today. The city has a responsibility legally for all right-of-ways, period. That's a court from 1897, whether they're publicly owned or privately owned. And this involves nuisance and gross negligence and negligence. If you're given constructive notice about conditions and you don't take care of it, you have no sovereign immunity in these matters. The Redevelopment Authority, Economic Development Authority, and the city over the years have conspired and come together on various ways, including committing felonies, in bringing about blight for purposes of their own interest. Blight is the condition and sense of hopelessness, a sense of hopelessness, whether it is created or it is manifest. It is used by these agencies and purposefully created to take grants. Now that's my preamble to this. Now let me move on to the real subject, which I petition the city attorney and the council to look into this immediately. The Constitution of Virginia has its natural, and the state, the Commonwealth, we're a Commonwealth, that means we're a republic, has its natural division in the counties. They do not have the same rights as the cities. Cities are created and chartered to do things as subalterns of the state with some of the responsibilities. You can create your own laws, you can create your own ordinances, you can have libraries, you can appoint boards and commissions, etc. Now, you have to comply with the state law. And if you're taking federal grants, you must comply with the federal law, thanks to Richard Nixon and the revenue sharing bill. Now, the state constitution also provides that the Economic Development Authority and the Redevelopment Authority can be created by the cities with the same rights and same rights as the cities. That means that they get sovereign immunity, limited sovereign immunity, following within functional and proprietary restraints. Here's the rub. They take federal money. They also intermingle with the city in taking out grants, applying for grants, receiving grants, moving money from one to the other, and all these other things I was just discussing. The problem is that the federal Constitution is very specific, and this is what I want you to look into. The Constitution of the United States requires that all states and all territories and all states and territories coming into the United States must be Republican in their forms of government. The Redevelopment Authority and the Economic Development Authority are not Republican forms of government, which leaves the citizen at a quandary of what to do. He's only got a recourse with the courts, or you can do like I did, you went to the HUD-IG, and they look into it, and the director is fired, or you did like I did 45 years ago, and you bring it to the council, and you throw them off of the Design Review Committee, both of them. Now, this is not a Republican form of government. You have a potential, and this state has a potential of losing its standing as a state within the United States because these are municipalities just like this city, and they are not in comportment with the requirements of the Constitution of the United States. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So that discussion started around the fire. I'm sure that Mr. Page intended to thank the Portsmouth Fire Department for protecting his property, but on his behalf, I'll thank the Portsmouth Fire Department for protecting his property and all the other properties around there. And I also want to recognize that we had firefighters injured fighting that fire in the middle of the night, and I want to give best wishes to them in their recovery. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Sergi O'Neill. Sir, come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. My name is Sergi O'Neill. I live at 1420 Elm Avenue here in this great city of Portsmouth. A lot of times people come before you to complain or to fuss or whatever the case might be, but I'm actually here on a very positive note tonight. I'm here to give thanks. I know we're not supposed to call specific names, but I have to. Starting with Mayor Glover. To give a little history on this, Mayor Glover has been trying to get the group of kids, my son and his siblings, my stepkids, whatever you want to call them, together, because last year, back in May, their mom was injured in a shooting. She got caught by a stray bullet that came through the front of our building. And the mayor so adamantly said, I want meet with those kids, I want to see how they doing, and blame it on me that I did not follow through with what he asked, for whatever the case might be. My schedule is all over the place. Their schedules are all over the place. And then they rely on me. But in all seriousness, though, he really was adamant about making sure that they met with him. So he said, you know what, I'm going to make sure they get the pizza I promised them. And they wanted me to come to you tonight and say thank you so much, because they were very, very happy to receive it. They are doing very well. They send their best wishes. They are so happy to see what's going on, the improvement around where we live. The other thanks I want to give to the members of council that met with Virginia Organizing to discuss behavioral health care in the city. I know it's a lot to do that on Zoom with a group of people, some of you that know, some of you that may not know. And I can tell you that the information that was received was very helpful. We all need to be in tune to what's going on with behavioral health care in our city, just because of the rise in the mental health crisis, not only in this city, but across the nation. Last but not least, a lot of times people take for granted the services that we receive, that the jobs that are very dirty, the people that are on feet or in trucks or whatever, that do the jobs a lot of us would not do, even if it paid $1 million, because pride takes over. And I would like to say again, thank you to our city waste management department.
Yeah.
Because I can speak, I've seen so many times where people say, oh, my trash wasn't picked up on time, or whatever the case might be. I've seen the job posting for it, and it was very enticing for what it's paying. It's a very competitive wage. It's very competitive. What my granddad got paid when he was in that division 40-some years ago. So I can tell you, if he was to do it right, if he could do it right now, he would jump to it. But he's in his 80s. But he's very thankful. The rest of us are very thankful. I can say that the young lady that services our street, that's on Elm Avenue on Fridays, if she sees you out there, even if your can is not out there on time, and she see you coming with it, she will stop and wait for you to put it at the street. If they're not lined up right and she see you outside, she'll say, hey, do you mind moving them so I can pick them up? And she does an excellent job. And I know, a lot of people, don't give credit for those people that do that dirty work, but trust and believe it, without that service, none of us would be happy. And I think we think, a lot of the glamorous jobs in the city, but they need the same amount of credit for what they do every day. So again, and then also too, because I just thought about it, just dawned on me, thank you to the Parks and Rec Department. I did not know, because I had raised the issue. I said, what is going on with Neighborhood Facility Recreation Center? And Lord knows I need to get myself, because I was ready to come and fuss, say, why isn't it open for summer camp? Did not realize that that facility was under the level of renovation that it is. And knowing the history of that facility in particular, from what it was, a National Guard armory, and knowing how once you start renovating stuff, you don't really know firsthand what it takes until you actually start peeling the layers back. There were certain materials in there that contained asbestos that had to be abated, and I know how that goes because I've had to deal with it myself. It's a very timely and costly and meticulous process because of the health risk involved. So thank you for what you all are doing overall in the city, and thank you to the leadership shown tonight. That will help bring businesses into it, the camaraderie up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Terry wants the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Neal, for that. And I just wanted to say, our operations at the city of Portsmouth are some hardworking individuals. They get out here every day, they show up, they do their job. Yes, it's not 100%, but I don't know any place that it's 100%. So I want to thank the Parks and Rec, Waste Management, Public Works, Public Utility, Vehicle Services, General Services, every department that's out here in this 100-degree weather doing their job, because we would not be able to function as a city if they did not show up to work every day, dedicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Cradle. Did he arrive yet? Well, we'll go on to the next one. Miss Ayanna Sykes. Is she available, Miss Sykes? Well, we've come to our last speaker for the evening, Miss Sheila Joseph. Ma'am, you state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
I hope everybody hear me loud and clear, because I haven't been really talking like I used to, if you notice. But on the 29th, I was from 7 o'clock of July until 12 o'clock. My son and I were setting up, preparing to see each one of you from this end to the attorney. And what we did was a letter so everybody be on one accord. And that was what the two city managers previous. And at that time, you know, we still haven't addressed. So when the new city manager came, I attempt to make on many occasions appointment, but couldn't get one. So on that time, while I was doing it, the Holy Spirit let me know, stop, don't send no message yet, for to check on my brother that was dying with cancer. And I called my sister, say, is he in the hospital or the nursing home? So she said, nursing home. So I immediately went there and watched my brother die. And I said, now that he's gone, I want to go back and finish, ready to write the letter where we need to get back on track for the things that we have been doing ever since the vice mayor said that we need to do something about the alley for the daycare. And I thank you for that. But you also said address the neighborhood of Fairville, because no one knew at the time. I can't talk about y'all two because you wasn't here. Nobody knew what Fairville was. I used to have it as Truxton on my paper when Mr. Whitehurst was in position to collect taxes, and I paid 23 years because my father died when I was young, and that's how I know. Somehow, in some way, Fairville became from Truxton to Fairville. But a lot of things you did not know, and others. This lady back in the time when Mayor Holly was in the seat, she assists me on some things. And the things that I research now, it have been vanished somehow. I don't know who did it, but I came here to talk about, I spoke to Mr. Wright about our street lights. And he said he was gonna do like a 90-day study. I'm gonna give you one real quick. On Deep Creek and Lincoln, it's a tall building. If you ride up and down there, you know you got to come far out. It's dangerous. When my son and daughter was young, on Grand Street, the tall building, you got to come out real far. The stop sign back here, but the building's here, and you got to go almost in the street. And a girl got hit by a car where the crossing guard was at. But I heard about the same thing, that a child got hit twice. So I'm still warning everybody. I let you know, and I know you know, because I came and listened to you in church before. God anoints you very well, and a lot of people don't know. He might be the type that speak his mind and different things with knowledge and whatnot, but I just wanted to say, you too, also, you did some background on things to try to let people know the rules and guidelines and stuff. So I wanted to say to you all today, when my brother died, I said, you know, I'm the type of person that's a part of life. And when y'all got Ecclesiastes away from me, I told you about the 22 verses to read it, and we are living in it. And I told you also about the hurricane. And I want to wrap it up because I see my time running, and that's why I don't like to speak, because I don't have enough time. But I can say there's more to come, and it already came. And God broke the streets pipe for over Emma Spa. On a Sunday, I took a lady at 97 years old. She lost her kids except 2. And when I came back, the water down Jefferson and Piedmont was like a river. And they had to turn that water off in the city of Portsmouth. Then I told y'all as a warning that it's more to come. And on Deep Creek, that street, I forgot the name of it, but it's a little bit beyond Charles. And the sign is there. Can I wrap it up? And the sign is there. But I'm warning you again, it's more to come.
Okay.
Go back and read those things that I wrote. And I put it all over the world for the people to go to twcmadonline.com about the $1 trillion to rebuild America and move those leaded pipes and different things. But
Thank you,
there's a
ma'am.
lot of things we can get done if we just come together and listen to the citizen.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any additional business before council to consider at this time? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.